Tragically abandoned and forgotten, these universal experiences now exist only in our memories, or in other cases, in our imaginations. Today, we'll be taking a look at some of the attractions abandoned by Universal Studios. Universal Studios Dubailand. The Universal Studios brand is a world-renowned name, and it's known for its high-quality attractions, animatronics, and live shows. This has allowed Universal to expand very quickly and strongly, having a presence all around the world with theme parks in Hollywood, Florida, Japan, and Singapore. Universal Singapore is Universal's most recent park, but while it was being developed, Universal was already planning on being a part of one of the most ambitious projects ever created, Dubailand. Dubailand was announced back in 2003 as one of the most ambitious leisure developments ever proposed anywhere in the world. This complex would cost $64.3 billion and would include 45 mega projects and 200 sub-projects, so you can imagine how huge this project was expected to be. The main focus of this complex would be theme parks, and of course, Dubai Holding, the company that was creating Dubailand, approached some of the world's best companies to bring their theme parks into the project. Among these parks, we could find Legoland, Six Flags, DreamWorks Studio, and of course, Universal Studios. So Universal started developing a new park with a price tag of $2.2 billion. The project was presented in 2007, it broke ground in 2008, and was set to open in 2010. This park would have 5 distinct areas, each with its own theme. These areas were Hollywood, New York, Surf City, Epic Adventures, and Legendary Heroes. The Hollywood and New York areas would remain almost the same as the ones that we can find in the US parks, but they would have to be covered and air-conditioned because of the high temperatures that Dubai experiences. Epic Adventures would be home to the Waterworld Stunt Show, the Jurassic Park Rapids Adventure Water Ride, and a clone of the Dragon Challenge dueling inverted roller coaster in Orlando, themed now to King Kong. Surf City would be a boardwalk and beach-themed area for kids that would include a Woody Woodpecker-themed kiddie coaster and a sandcastle-themed carousel. It would also have 3 Sesame Street-themed attractions. Legendary Heroes was going to include another incarnation of the Revenge of the Mummy indoor roller coaster, the 8th Voyage of Sinbad attraction, and a water play area called King Tut's Oasis. In September of 2008, an office building in the shape of the classic Universal Studios archway was constructed, as well as the giant arch that would serve as the park's entrance. This gave the impression that everything was going great and that the park would open pretty much on time for guests, but the reality was completely different. In 2009, the world was going through a massive economic crisis, and this hurt a lot of projects. One of these was Dubailand. This global financial crisis prompted developers to announce that the project would be delayed, and the parks would push back their openings until at least 2012. But a year passed, nothing changed. There was no construction going on in the park, and employees were silently being laid off. In April of 2011, Universal was once again in talks with Dubai officials about finishing the park, but still, everything remained the same. The construction site was abandoned entirely, and the only thing that remained was the office building, a few empty roads, and of course, the famous Universal Park's entrance archway. Finally, in 2016, it was announced that plans for the Universal Studios Dubailand theme park had officially been scrapped. Dubailand is still being developed, but some of the main theme park projects like Six Flags were canceled. Parks like the Formula 1 theme park, which had also been started, were left abandoned, just like Universal was. And parks like Legoland and DreamWorks parks were built, but not at Dubailand, but they were built at Dubai Parks and Resorts, just 35 kilometers from Dubailand. Triceratops Encounter, Universal Studios Orlando. When Universal first purchased the land to create the Universal Orlando Resort, they always had in mind that they would open a second park. The only thing they had to figure out was the theme of this park, given that all of their franchises are already going to be featured at Universal Studios Florida. They had the idea of creating a park dedicated to tunes, and for this, they would buy the licensing rights from companies like Warner, J. Ward, Marvel, and even DC Comics, and create lands themed to their characters. While the plans for this park were being developed, Jurassic Park was a worldwide success. and a new ride was being developed already for Universal Studios Hollywood. They had a great idea of adding this franchise to the new park, and that's how the Islands of Adventure concept was born.
We're gonna make a fortune with this place.
Universal used the licenses they acquired to create a fantastic park with lots of different franchises, such as Marvel Spider-Man and The Incredible Hulk. They had Jay Ward's Dudley Do-Right, King Feature's Popeye, and other comic strips, and Dr. Seuss's The Cat in the Hat, among other characters. They also hired many of the designers that had been working with Disney on Beastly Kingdom to create the Lost Continent area of the park. In 1999, Islands of Adventure was open, and unlike the catastrophic debut of Universal Studios Florida, Islands of Adventure opened with excellent reviews by guests and the press alike. The park opened with 6 themed lands: Port Venture, Marvel Superhero Land, Toon Lagoon, the Lost Continent, Seuss Landing, and Jurassic Park.
Welcome to Jurassic Park.
This last island was themed to Isla Nublar, and one of the main attractions that Universal announced to this area of the park was the possibility of having close encounters with dinosaurs, but more specifically, a Triceratops.
This is our Triceratops encounter. This is where our guests have the opportunity to see a living, breathing dinosaur.
This encounter was based on the one that Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler saw in Jurassic Park. For this attraction, the 3 life-size Triceratops were created. Their names were Topper, Chris, and Sarah. These animatronics were created by MD Robotics, and they were 30 feet long and almost 10 feet high. Universal requested specific requirements for the robots, including the ability to replicate breathing. This would be done through synchronized ribcage movements, sneezing, snorting, among other things. These animatronics were very impressive, but ironically, the complexity of the animatronics was, to a large extent, the downfall of this attraction because it caused them to break down regularly. But that was not the only problem. Universal had announced that this encounter would be very personal, but that was far from the truth. The animatronic was pretty far, and there was a barrier that prevented guests from going near it. This caused guests to stop going to see the attraction regularly. In 2002, the encounter started to have many problems, and guests found it constantly closed until it was actually closed permanently in 2003. This attraction remained closed and abandoned until 2010, when it reopened with a whole new name, Discovery Trail. This didn't last long because it was closed again to be reopened in 2011 with its original name. But the problems with the attraction had not been solved, and it closed again in 2012, this time for good. The attraction and the animatronics were left abandoned in this area of the park. And of course, as time passed, the animatronics began to get worn out. They were in a terrible state. One lost its head, the other had an endoskeleton exposed, and they continued getting worse until 2014 when they were removed entirely. The rest of the area continued to be abandoned except for a small area that was reused for a new Raptor Encounter attraction. This new attraction is similar to the Triceratops encounter, but it is much more interactive because it allows guests to get near the raptor, interact with it, and even take pictures. In 2018, Universal filed permits to demolish the area, and that's where the famous Velocicoaster was built. Fortunately, some raptor animatronics were placed inside the new attraction.
Life, finds a way.
Oh my freaking gosh, I cannot believe I'm at Nickelodeon Studios. I am freaking out, they are freaking out, about to take a tour of Nickelodeon.
Abandoned Nickelodeon Studios. Nickelodeon has gone through many changes throughout the years. When we think of Nickelodeon, we think of it as we knew it in the 90s, but in the beginning, it was completely different. Nickelodeon started as C3, an educational channel that was part of Ohio's QUBE cable system back in 1977. In 1979, the channel was rebranded as Nickelodeon, the first ever all-children's network on Warner Cable Franchises, billing itself as the Young People's Channel. The channel had many programs dedicated to kids, but the one that stood out during this time was a Canadian show called You Can't Do That on Television. This was a sketch comedy show in the spirit of Saturday Night Live, maybe even all that would later to come. This featured teens, preteens, and an iconic element, the neon green slime that we all know and love. In this show, the slime would rain down on the show's cast in hilarious, reoccurring skits. But even though this program was very popular, the channel's ratings were awful. Warner was losing more than they were getting, so they decided to spin off Nickelodeon, Music Network's MTV, and now the defunct radio television station into the newly formed subsidiary MTV Networks. Nickelodeon and MTV had an aggressive rebranding in the hands of producers Fred Seibert and Alan Goodman. They created one of the most iconic TV indents in the history of television for MTV, and they went off to do the same for Nick. They reinvigorated the channel and took it into its golden age. In 1984, Nick was quickly becoming one of the most popular channels on TV. It was gaining viewers and fans with its new cartoons, live shows, and its sitcoms. As its popularity grew, the project started becoming more ambitious, and executives knew they had to take the next step. They needed a place to film all of these projects. In the late 80s, Universal and Disney were at a war. They both wanted to create movie-based theme parks in Orlando, and ultimately turn Orlando into Hollywood East. They were both building parks where guests were going to see how movies were made. But Disney beat Universal by building it first, and Universal, instead of canceling its plans for the park, decided that they would take it one step further. Instead of creating their usual studio tour, they would create amazing standalone attractions like Jaws, Confrontation, and Earthquake. But that's not all. Universal made an agreement with Nick in which they would provide the sound stages for Nick so they could have the production space they needed for their new projects. In return, Universal would open with a trusted family brand that could rival Disney. This was an excellent deal for Nick, and they took sound stages 17 for offices, dressing rooms, and makeup rooms, and they took 18 and 19 for the production of games, variety and audience participation shows, and more. Nickelodeon Studios opened alongside Universal Studios Florida on June 7th, 1990, with a special live broadcast party hosted by Mark Summers, host of Double Dare. The celebration included an army of kids dressed in 90s neon garb, racing from the Universal Globe to the new slime geyser outside the studio for its inaugural eruption of neon green sludge. The studio was doing great, but in 1991, Nick debuted 3 iconic cartoons: Rugrats, Doug, and Ren and Stimpy. This catapulted their brand into superstardom. This turned Nickelodeon Studios into a must-go destination in Orlando. And how could it not be? After all, Nick was one of the most popular brands for kids all over in the 90s, and everyone wanted to see how their amazing shows were being created. And of course, Nick's sound stages were not the usual boring-looking production stages. They were painted neon red, blue, and toxic green, paneled with zebra, newsprint patterns, and bold 90s stripes and zigzags, and the iconic slime geyser that exploded every 15 minutes, launching green-tinted slime everywhere. The studio was not only used for productions, but it also had a 40-minute attraction where guests could experience how real shows were being made. The tour began in the upper levels of Soundstage 18, where guests could find a glassed-in hallway overlooking a real studio set. The set you're looking down on can be from Kenan and Kel, Chris Explains It All, among others. But the set was not a recreation. This was the actual set where the programs were being made. Guests could even call the official Nick Studios hotline to ask for a production schedule so they could see actors on set rehearsing or recording. Next came the post-production workspace, where shows are edited and where special effects are added. After that, guests were taken to the Nick at Night Museum with artifacts from Nickelodeon and its late-night classic TV programming block. After that, the real fun began. Guests were taken into the GAC kitchen, where they would have an inside peek at how exactly Nickelodeon's famous slime was made. And some guests even got to test new recipes for Nick's slime and GAC, including tasting them. But the grand finale, and what was considered by many to be the best part of this tour, was the Game Lab. In this part of the tour, families could participate in real Double Dare style challenges that were being prototyped so they could be used in the show. How genius was that? Nickelodeon Studios was a fantastic place to experience how these programs were made. Guests could sign up to sit in the audience of a live taping of Figure It Out, Legends of the Hidden Temple, Slime Time Live, or Nickelodeon All-Star Challenge. Nickelodeon continued being a huge success, and ironically, this is what brought the downfall of Nickelodeon Studios. Executives decided to move away from game shows and variety shows towards Nicktoons and cartoons like Rocket Power, The Fairly Odd Parents, SpongeBob SquarePants, As Told by Ginger, and Invader Zim. They all debuted in a 3-year period between 1999 and 2001. And not only that, they also shifted towards scripted sitcoms like Drake and Josh, Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, and Zoe 101, which all required closed, quiet sets, not the rowdy game show audiences. So they opened 2 new production facilities in Los Angeles by 1998 so that they could produce these types of shows. Slowly, Nickelodeon Studios started being abandoned. Apart from the Figure It Out show and some other special events, nothing was being filmed in the studio. By 2001, the tour was reduced from the 40 minutes that it used to last to only 10 minutes. And in 2004, the studio was repainted with a new look, which made people think that somehow it would revive the studio, but the opposite was about to happen. In that same year, Nickelodeon Studios filmed its last production, Nickelodeon Splat, live from March 7, 2004 to August 17, 2004, and in April of 2005, the last tour took place, and the Nickelodeon Studios was closed forever. The logo, fountain, and signs were removed. A time capsule that was buried back in 1992 and contained many 90s objects like an original 1992 Game Boy, a pair of Reebok pump sneakers, and a pair of rollerblades, a Barbie, VHS copies of Home Alone and Back to the Future, and lots of other stuff were relocated to Orlando's Nickelodeon Suites and Resort until 2016, when it was taken to Nickelodeon Animation Studios in Burbank, California, and is set to be open in 2042. Stage 18 was transformed into the Sharp Aquas Theater, which opened on June 6, 2007, featuring the Blue Man Group. Stage 19 was utterly abandoned along with the offices, the equipment, and other remnants of what used to be Nick's studio. In 2016, this was all renovated and became a Blue Man Group VIP experience. Much of the rest of the old Nickelodeon Studios facility is now inhabited by Fox Sports, Florida, and its television production and administrative space. Soundstage 19 is used as parade float storage for the park next door. Sadly, all the Double Dare 2000, Clarissa Explains It All, Good Burger, Eureka's Castle, The Mystery Files of Shelby Woo, and Legends of the Hidden Temple sets were completely demolished and destroyed. As of 2025, the building is completely abandoned. The area that once housed the Blue Man Group was vacated in 2021, and currently, there's nothing there. It's sad to think that all of this ended up abandoned. That's all for today. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next week.